It's the Cool Kids Club. You've been invited to the Cool Kids Club. It's so exciting, yeah. Justin likes monsters, yeah. And Amy likes words in the Cool Kids Club. Cool Kids Club.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Cool Kids Club podcast. This is episode number 85, and I am one of your hosts, Justin.
Well, hey, Justin.
Hey.
I'm your other host, Amy. And together,
Amy.
we are America's
Yes.
favorite siblings.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. Justin, 85, that's a good year.
85 is a great year.
That's a good year, right?
Yeah, I mean, I joined the world that year. So,
In the 1900s.
Doesn't get much better than, the 1900s.
Yeah, my kids like to remind me that I'm from the 1900s.
I'm from another century.
The late 1900s.
That makes me feel like I'm like a frail little Victorian child, like a wispy ghost.
I mean, you're not a Victorian child.
Right.
I mean,
that's what it makes me feel like when they say 1900s. Are you feeling
sickly? Well, when you're feeling sickly,
I'm okay.
Sometimes you're a little peaked. Is that what they call it?
No, I mean, I don't think I have like a touch of the consumption or anything.
No. Okay.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, but in 1985, you were born.
The year of our Lord.
The year of our Lord. And so this is episode 85, and I think this is a very Justin-y episode to be doing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
85.
For sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is part 2 of our big 2-part WCW retrospective. Part 2?
That felt good. That felt natural.
We back.
We back.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm
gonna start doing some. I know you can't see, but I'm gonna start.
You're DX crotch chopping.
Yeah, I'm DX crotch chopping.
That's a different company, but hey, I will take it.
But it's the same era.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it is.
It's the same era, and I'm just showing you how much I've learned from these retrospectives.
Well, good, and I hope we continue.
I hope y'all can hear the swishing of my hands on the microphone.
The swishing of the crotch chop.
But I mean, there was some equally nasty, dirty stuff going on over here in WCW that we're going to talk about. So,
I mean, there was and there wasn't. Yeah. Man, this is. All of the 90s, it's just like, and they're two different. You have like the early 90s and the late 90s. For me as a wrestling fan, two extremely different vibes.
Yes,
and feels like two distinct parts of my wrestling fandom, even though they are obviously like very close to each other. So today we're talking WCW again, like we did in the last episode, and this we're gonna sort of pick up when Hulk Hogan joins the company.
Yes.
And all of his guys. So basically, this setup, we moved. Hulk Hogan joins the company in 94, WCW. We moved from Florida to Tennessee in 95. And so by the time a lot of this stuff is happening that we're going to talk about, like, we're already in Tennessee, and this is just like, it feels like even though it's just a year or two removed from stuff like, The Undertaker dying and ascending. It just feels, the campiness of that, it feels so different. It's just a totally different vibe.
It's kind of like when we talked about SNL in the 90s, how like the early 90s and the late, like the first half and the second half feel like totally different. They could be their own episodes because they have completely different feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mid-90s is it was not a great time for the wrestling business in general.
Yeah.
The two biggest companies in the United States, the WWF and the WCW, were both kind of at low points. Like viewership's down, attendance is down, basically down across the board.
The vibes were off.
They're in a creative nadir. Like there's just, I liked a lot of it because I was a kid and even today I have a lot of nostalgia for it.
You were 10 years old and your taste was questionable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if it was happening today, I would be like, this sucks.
This is terrible.
This is getting bad, isn't it?
Yeah, but as a 10-year-old, you're like, cool.
I was on board. Yeah. I was on board.
Whatever they had, you were there for it.
But 96 really for both companies sort of begins the year of letting like, okay, what we're doing's not working, and we've talked about WWF ad nauseum. We've done 6 episodes on the history of WWF from the 80s through the 90s. And but it is impossible to talk about this era of wrestling without talking about both companies.
Yeah.
Because so much of what they were doing was reaction to or
it's like call and response,
what the other was
basically,
doing.
Like,
yeah, basically
we did talk about that in our in our last, maybe not the
Yes.
last, but yeah, when we talked about this era in WWF, we did talk quite a bit about what WCW was doing, because you really can't talk about one without the other during this time.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously this is part 2.
Part 2.
I would, of course, encourage you to go listen to part 1 because I'm not going to go back and do a previously on.
Yeah, just go ahead and like pause this one.
Just if you haven't listened to it, pause it, go back and listen to it.
Just quick pop that on real quick.
Hey, and then hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. Hey, let's talk.
And now we're just gonna pick right up.
Yeah, perfect.
So I feel like the big things you need to take away from, like, okay, where are we? We're gonna start in about 95 in World Championship Wrestling. Eric Bischoff takes over basically as the president of WCW. He is sort of on screen, much like Vince McMahon was at the time. On screen, he's like an announcer, a commentator, an interviewer. But in real life, he is kind of the guy in charge of the company. Like, obviously, Ted Turner owns the company. This is part of the Turner Media conglomerate, part of a much, much bigger organization. But Eric Bischoff, in real life, is the guy in charge. He's the one making the decisions. And when he takes over in 1993, he, first of all, of course, wants to cut costs. So they're doing things like the Disney tapings, which we talked about last episode.
Oh, yeah.
But what he really wants to do, and what he is able to convince Ted Turner to do, and we talked about the Ted Turner-Vince McMahon relationship last episode.
Yes.
Is he wants to compete. He's like, I want to compete directly with Vince McMahon and the WWF.
Fuck that guy.
Basically he's like, their product sucks. I think we can beat them.
Our product also sucks, but we think it could be better.
I have a plan.
I have a dream. Yeah.
I have a dream. And to be honest, it works pretty well for a while.
Listen,
it actually
they ride
works
this
really,
right
really well
the
for
grave.
a while.
Yeah, they ride it. I mean,
this is
up there, and then they are. It's a quick, hard fall.
Oh man, it all happens so quickly.
Yep.
So quickly. So we're gonna start basically. The first thing Eric Bischoff does when he says I want to compete directly with Vince in the WWF is he starts signing some of the biggest stars that WWF has ever produced. So he signs Hulk Hogan. He signs the Macho Man Randy Savage. And one of the big things about this that's important outside of just the signing of those names is that these guys are coming in under guaranteed contracts, which is not something that was happening anywhere in the wrestling business at any point previous to this.
Really? They didn't have guaranteed contracts with WWF?
No.
What?
WWF didn't have guaranteed contracts until after this, until like 96 or 7, I think.
Okay, so when you say guaranteed contracts, you mean like for a particular amount of time?
Yes, and you are guaranteed to make this, like you were making like a per appearance.
Okay.
And then you would make like a percentage of merchandise and you would do this, but it was like now everyone's under a guaranteed contract. Basically.
So before, what did it look like?
Well, it was very WWE today uses the independent contractor status to exploit basically and get people into contracts that, you know, the corporation has all the power and the people don't. That's a whole other conversation to have, but it was very much an independent contractor type of deal.
Okay.
So it was easy to just sort of go back and forth because it was like, well, I'm not under contract to you, so
right, like I'm not beholden to a certain company, so
yeah, so bye. I'm
just gonna wrestle wherever they're giving me the best gig, best story.
Right, and this is coming out of the territory era. The territories are dead at this point, functionally dead.
Yeah.
At this point, you're left with
they're dead.
You're left with the two superpowers, the WWF and WCW. And WCW is coming in and they're signing Hulk Hogan, but of course Hulk Hogan is a big megastar, so he's like, I'm not coming, I'm coming and I'm making money. You want me? I'm gonna make money. You better pay me.
Which, you know what? He is a giant douchebag, but he's not wrong in that respect.
No, he's not. And they also do something.
These people should be paid for what they're doing, and they should be paid fairly. It's insane.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that's honestly a whole other conversation that we could have that is still very relevant today. But we won't go down that rabbit hole just now. But one thing that happens that would also be a first, maybe not a first, but something that would really come back to bite them in the ass later down the road, was when you have these guys, Hogan and Randy Savage and all these big guys coming in, is they, in their contract, they would have creative control over... Of,
like, their storylines?
Of, like, their characters. And so basically, at any point, they could be like, that doesn't work for me, like, brother.
No, I don't like that.
And no, I'm not doing that.
Do a full impression. None, that... I want a full impression.
That doesn't work for me, brother.
There you go. Can we get a Randy Savage?
Ooh, yeah, I don't like the way that sounds, and I'm not gonna be doing it. Yeah.
You're so good at those.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so step one, Eric Bischoff's like, I'm gonna take on Vince McMahon. Fuck that guy. Yeah. And he's right about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy and his company. We're gonna
rode in on.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hire his big stars that he made in the 80s.
Yep.
So you get this wave of new people. Hogan and Savage are the two biggest, but you get like this whole wave of new people coming in, starting in like 94.
Now, is this when the Monday Night War starts?
Well, yeah, we're getting there in just a second because yes.
Okay.
This also has the interesting effect. Of course, no one really foresaw it at the time, but you had these like mid-card, lower-card guys.
Yeah.
Who had been kind of trying to work their way up the card in WCW for a long time. It's like, well, now all of a sudden, all this new crop of stars are coming in, and we're getting pushed aside. And, like, it's clear there's not a place for us here anymore.
Right.
So you get a lot of those people leaving.
Yep.
And a lot of those people end up, they make rounds in ECW. They maybe go to Japan for a little bit, or independence, and they wind up in WWF. Oh. You get Steve Austin. You get Mick Foley.
Stone Cold?
Dustin Rhodes. So it's like, yeah, if this doesn't happen, we don't get Stone Cold Steve Austin. We don't get Mick Foley, and we don't get Goldust, and we don't get probably Triple H, because Triple H was a lower card guy in WCW.
Okay.
So it's just this interesting kind of effect that it has, like looking back on it. But the second thing, so he's got all these stars signed. They're spending a bunch of money, and Ted Turner's like, I got the money to spend. Sure, fuck Vince. You can have all this money. And they're just throwing money at these guys.
Right.
Bischoff goes to Ted Turner and says, what do I need to do to beat Vince? And Ted Turner's like, you need a you have to have a primetime television show.
Yeah.
Because WWF has Monday Night Raw every Monday night, and he's like, preferably directly opposite them. So Ted Turner's like, how about I give you an hour live on my channel TNT every Monday night, the same time Raw comes on.
Oh my god.
And let's see how that goes. You're literally there's gonna be two wrestling shows on the same night. So September 4th, 1995 is the beginning of the era known as the Monday Night War.
Okay.
Which we have talked about from the WWF perspective.
We have, yes.
But this September 4th, 1995 is the first episode of Nitro live from the Mall of America. Features the surprise return of Lex Luger, who up until like a few days before had been under WWF contract.
Was this before or after the USS?
This is after. He'd already done this.
Because they tried to make him a big star over there.
Yeah, so it was basically like, very first episode out. Like, he was wrestling shows for WWF up until like a day or two before.
That's crazy.
And so it was very much the vibe of like, oh shit, anything can happen. One of the other wrestlers just showed up at the end of the shit. Like, that's no one knew that was going to happen. So it was this huge moment. And so September 1995, we get the beginning of the Monday Night War. Now we have WCW Monday Nitro, which happens to sound exactly like WWF Monday Night Raw on TNT. And this era, Amy, this era. Once we get into like 96 and stuff, I just remember so distinctly. We were obviously living here at the time, and I remember going over every Monday night. Seemingly, we would go over to our cousin Steven's house, and we being me and my dad, our dad.
Yeah.
And we would watch both shows kind of simultaneously. Like, we would flip back and forth. And I remember we would either like order food, or Steven's wife Laura would cook something.
Yeah.
And usually it would be me, Dad, Steven, and one or two of Steven's friends.
Yeah.
And we would watch wrestling, and we would like basically we would like go back and forth, like what's got the better thing on right now.
Yeah.
And that was just such a I love that.
I miss appointment TV so much.
And that's the thing, is like, if you missed it, there's nowhere else to see it.
And watching this at one night a week and having that to look for. I really miss that.
Yeah. And both of them, so they're now in direct competition for each other, and it kicks WWF into gear, because they're now getting their asses handed to them. It kicks WCW into gear because they're trying to hand WWF their ass.
Yeah.
And Eric Bischoff is kind of the king of, I won't say he's the king of sleazy tactics, because that's probably Vince McMahon. These are low. I'll say it's low. So they do things like December 18th, 1995. The female wrestler in the WWF, the woman that they had been attempting to build a women's division around. She went under the name Alundra Blaze, but she had before WWF went under the name Medusa. She shows up on WCW Nitro with the WWF Women's Championship belt and throws it in the trash.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
Now, this, of course, would kind of have effects later on when Vince McMahon is afraid Bret Hart is going to show up on WCW TV with
this
the
is,
title.
of course, would enrage people.
Yes. Yeah. So this pissed a bunch of people off.
Sure.
But it's like, kind of, it's sort of very much like shots fired. You know, like,
it's kind of badass.
Like, we're taking a direct shot at you.
Yep.
But really, so things kick into gear. In May of 1996. So WCW Nitro has been going for about 8 months at this point.
Yeah.
Going on a year. And
going pretty strong. Yeah.
You know, May 27th, 1996, Memorial Day weekend. Actually, Memorial Day. Scott Hall, who wrestled in the WWF as Razor
Ramon.
So as we discussed in the WWF episodes, once they had this exodus of all these 80s guys in the very early 90s, Hogan and Savage and all those folks, they really had to build up a lot of new stars. Razor Ramon is one of them. We've discussed him before. He leaves WWF and shows up. He walks through the crowd in the middle of a random match on Nitro in street clothes.
Our mom is going wild.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She loves Scott Hall.
In jeans and a denim vest with no shirt under it.
Oh my God, Donna.
Not calling himself Razor Ramon, but he's got the toothpick. He's got the hair. He's got the accent. Right.
You know. He doesn't have to say. You know.
And he cuts a really, like, one of the most famous promos in WCW history. Basically, he comes out and he's like, you all know who I am. You don't know what I'm doing here. And he ends it with saying, you want a war? Well, you got a war.
Ooh.
So the implication being, I'm a WWF wrestler. You all know who I am and where I'm from.
Right.
And I'm showing up on the show, and this is not supposed to be happening.
Interesting.
So, and this is really, I mean, this is before the internet was the internet that it would become. Yeah. And so this wasn't, you couldn't just go on to Twitter and see everyone's live reactions. I mean, people didn't know what the hell was going on. Like, is this really, like, happening? Like, are they really, like, sending their guys to sabotage the other company's shows on live TV?
It's like when your shows have, like, a crossover episode.
Yeah, but this is like, is this an authorized crossover episode?
Did he just come out here? Do they even know he was here? Who
So
let
they
him in?
So they end up dubbing this the Hostile Takeover, and we're building to one of WCW's big pay-per-views of the year.
Oh, okay.
2 weeks later, Scott Hall is joined. 2 weeks.
I was gonna say it, but
I know.
finish.
I could see you were gonna do it. So, 2 weeks later, Scott Hall is joined by Kevin Nash, who up until a few
Big
months
Daddy
before
Diesel.
was the WWF champion Diesel. Big Daddy Cool. Big D. Another Amy crush, I believe. So so you got a big crush on the Outsiders then, right?
Well, now Mom really had a crush on Razor Ramon.
Mom's got a crush on Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. You got a crush on Diesel, Kevin Nash?
Jesus Christ, he climbed in like a tree. Who wouldn't?
Even now, it's Silver Fox.
Now. I mean, what
So
red-blooded American woman wouldn't?
Sure.
That's what I'd like to know.
So these two, they start referring to them as the Outsiders. They start referring to them by their real names. They don't say the words Razor Ramon. They don't say Diesel.
Yeah.
They're Scott Hall and they're Kevin Nash. They're the Outsiders. There is actually a lawsuit that WWF files very early on, like while this is all happening, that's basically saying, hey, please stop implying that we are sabotaging your show because they don't work here anymore. So, like, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash at the Great American Bash have to come out and basically in this segment say, we don't work for WWF anymore.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
And the lawsuit drags on in the background for years and years.
Sure.
As these things do. This all leads up to, they start calling it the Hostile Takeover. And this is leading up to probably the most famous... No, not probably. Definitely. The most famous heel turn of all time. So we're building toward Bash at the Beach, which is one of WCW's biggest shows. It's their big summer show.
I love that name.
July 7th, 1996. I know, right?
They got Bash at the Beach. They got Halloween Havoc. I'm really digging their names.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
Digging their shows.
Great American Bash. That's a good
that's
one
a
that
good
comes
one,
on
too.
in the summer. Yeah. So we have the Outsiders who are now promising we're going to have a third man.
I can't hear the Outsiders and not think of like Pony Boy.
Right.
Johnny.
So you're like, is it going to be Pony Boy? Is it going to be Soda Pop Curtis?
Are they going to come out
That's joining them.
in tight jeans and white t-shirts with cigarettes rolled up in the sleeves and switchblades?
I mean, pretty much.
That would
Pretty
be
much.
great. To fight
And that's the thing.
socialists.
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, in the weeks leading up to this, are just sort of showing up and causing chaos. And it's really like getting interesting because it's like you don't know when they're going to show up. You don't know what they're going to do. What are they like? Who are they going to attack? They just seem to like they attack Eric Bischoff at one point and powerbomb him through the stage. And so yeah, it's this like real feeling of like
What the fuck's going on?
unpredictability. What's going on? And they dub it the Hostile Takeover. And this is all leading to Bash at the Beach, the main event of the Outsiders and an unknown third man versus Team WCW, who ends up being Sting, the Macho Man, and Lex Luger.
Okay.
So those are your good guys.
Yeah.
The match is the main event, obviously. At the end of the match, who comes out? Who comes out?
This
but
is the moment I've been waiting for.
The Hulkster.
The Hulkster.
Who up until this point, you know, he's still doing the red and yellow, the say your prayers and take your vitamins and just a very dated, you know, 80s thing
80s patriotic.
that
Little
he's
ketchup
been
and
doing
mustard.
that he's been doing for 15 years basically
Sure.
at this
I mean,
point,
it's
you
been
know?
working for him. So
And it's been working, but it's not really working that great these days because I think,
it's
you
not,
know,
it's not fresh. It's not new.
it's passé. And he comes out seemingly to help Team WCW, but nay.
No.
He drops the big old leg right across Randy Savage's face, and for the first time since he became the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan turns heel in the greatest heel turn of all time. It really, like, this is it. Like, that's the end of the conversation. What's the greatest heel turn of all time? Hulk Hogan, Bash at the Beach 96.
This is when he becomes Hollywood Hulk Hogan, right?
This is the birth of Hollywood Hulk Hogan. This is
the
like Superman
black,
turning bad.
This is the black do-rag.
Yes.
Yeah.
He gets on the mic and cusses out the fans, basically. And it's this amazing... He cuts a promo. He refers to the three of them as the New World Order.
Oh, shit. That's when that starts.
And the fans are pelting the ring with trash. So there's drink cups and beer cans food packages and food flying everywhere into the ring, and he's cutting this promo, running down the fans, and Hall and Nash are just like laughing it up, and it's incredible. It still is. I watched this yesterday because it was the 28th anniversary of this.
Yeah.
And I knew we were talking about it on the podcast, so I watched all of Bash at the Beach 96, and boy, and it ends like Mean Gene, who of course has been like, back in the WWF days, it was always Mean Gene and Hulk Hogan backstage, and so they're kind of, and it ends with like that trash being pelted in the ring, and you hear like the announcers they throw down their headsets in disgust, and Tony Schiavone, like the last thing they say on the podcast is like, it's basically, he's just like, I don't know, what are we gonna do? And he's like, Hulk Hogan, you can go to hell. You can go straight to hell. And just like throws his headset down.
So dramatic.
Yeah. So now Hulk Hogan is the third man. And this is one of those...
Mystery man.
This is one of those, like, when you look at the history of wrestling, this is a flashpoint. Because this is the creation of the New World Order, which is one of, if not the most successful storylines in the history of wrestling. The story of this organization coming in to basically destroy WCW. And ironically, they kind of did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if that was the goal, then, you know, it took them a while. It took them a few years.
Yeah, mission accomplished.
But they did it. So, starting with this, really because of the NWO storyline, WCW starts a streak of, because they're going head-to-head on Monday nights against Raw, beating Raw in the ratings, and they would beat them for 84 consecutive weeks. It really is, you cannot understate how big this was. Like, this changed the company.
Yeah.
It is the thing that propelled WCW to, at this point, becoming the biggest wrestling company in the world, surpassing WWF. And it is really, really good TV. I remember right after this, right? So like fresh off of this, they're still taping a lot of their stuff at Disney. So there is, and they're taping an episode outside at Hollywood Studios. Well, it's MGM Studios at the time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it when I went to MGM Studios with you last year for the first time. And I was thinking about it then, and I was like, I wonder where they filmed it, because it's just this famous episode where they, like the NWO, which is at this point is essentially just the three of them, attack, and they're attacking baby faces, they're attacking heels, they're attacking announcers. They're like, it doesn't matter, like, kind of. So you start to have like a cool dynamic of like people who used to be like arch enemies are like, well, we're gonna have to unite against this threat, you know. You've got like all of a sudden like the Four Horsemen and Randy Savage are like, let's put aside our differences because there's something bigger going on here.
Oh man.
Like, yeah, it's cool, and they attack the whole thing, and they like attack the production, and it's just very, very real feeling. Like, you see behind the scenes, and they're back like spray painting production trucks, and you see like the actual behind the scenes machinations of this show. And Kevin Nash just, you have to look up this the clip of him just like lawn darting Rey Mysterio into the side of a production truck. It's hilarious. And yeah, it's just, it was just like, it felt like it very much blurred the lines of reality and fiction. You're like, how much, because it feels like how much of this is actually be happening. Like, I know it's supposed to, but this is a lot. This is a lot compared to the wrestling I'm used to getting.
Yeah.
Right?
So weird.
So, this leads to, of course, they're going to put the title on Hollywood Hulk Hogan again.
Of course.
At this time, the champion is the Giant, who you might know better as Big Show. He would eventually be Big Show.
Oh, yes. Okay.
But he started as the Giant in WCW in the Dungeon of Doom, which we didn't even mention. That's a whole other thing. That was kind of before this, during Hogan's, when he was still doing the red and yellow.
Okay.
but he's the champion at this point. At Hog Wild, the next pay-per-view, they put the belt. He beats the Giant for the world title. He spray paints the world title. He spray paints the letters NWO across the belt and rechristens it. He's like, no, this is now the NWO Championship. This isn't the WCW Championship. This is NWO Championship. And so they are taking over. Next thing you know, the Outsiders have weaseled their way into being tag champions. So now they're going around collecting all the belts. So eventually the NWO would become giant and bloated and unwieldy. But here in these early days, the fourth man is actually, and I think a lot of people forget this, because he's retired at the time, and he's retired from the ring. He's not wrestling. The fourth man is actually Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man.
Really?
He who also until this point was in WWF had been for years at this point. And he's revealed as, and I love that they took the time to make it make sense in this little way of he's the financial backer.
He's the Frank Reynolds.
We know this is a rich guy because he's the $1 Million Man.
Well, sure.
Right? Yeah. We're not going to call him $1 Million Man because that's WWF's thing. Yeah. But he's Ted DiBiase, and he's basically revealed as like he's the guy who's financing this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then we get the first WCW defection.
Ooh.
Early on, and that is the Giant.
Really?
The Giant joins the NWO, and then we get so you have sort of the first big 6 members. You have the Outsiders, Hogan, DiBiase as the sort of manager, finance guy. He's the money. He's the
Frank Reynolds.
Yeah, he is the Frank Reynolds.
Yeah.
You get the Giant, and then you get the debut of Sean Waltman, going by the name of Six, and until very recently,
him at all.
Oh, of course you do, because this is the 1, 2, 3 Kid.
What?
Yeah. So he is Six, SYXX.
Oh, that's
which is for 2 reasons. One is he's the 6th member of the group, and 2, 1 + 2 + 3 = 6.
God damn it! Now, have we already told the story of meeting the 1, 2, 3 Kid when he was?
I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah.
Okay.
But we definitely did. That was before. That was probably like in '93 or '94.
That was before he was.
That
the
was
1, 2,
when
3
he was.
Kid.
No, he was the 1, 2, 3 Kid already, but it was very early on.
Wow. Okay. Met him out back, right?
Met him out in back of the arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was very nice.
Oh yeah, and yeah. So now you have like kind of this core group of the 6 of them. Those are the first 6, and we are not going to get into every single member of the NWO.
Oh, thank God!
Because we will be here all night. But what we do need to talk about is who do we have that's going to oppose these guys? Because this is they're running roughshod. They're doing whatever they want. They're beating up whoever they want. And who will come to WCW's defense? And you would think, you know what? It's gonna be Sting, because Sting is he's Mr. WCW, right?
Yeah.
He's the face paint. He is the Hulk Hogan of WCW, right? He's their Superman. He's their ultimate good guy. And so what happens is they basically trick Team WCW into they being NWO, thinking that Sting has joined the NWO.
What?
They have a fake Sting, which they're able to do because he's got a thing. A thing, because he's got face paint. And it's one of those where it really does look like Sting until you put him next to real Sting, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's not Sting. Kind of like when they did fake Undertaker in WWF.
Yeah.
I'm watching that and I'm like, oh, that's
Undertaker,
that's the Undertaker. And then you see him next to the actual Undertaker and it's like, oh yeah.
No,
he's like,
no, it's not.
He's like 4 inches shorter. Like, that is not the Undertaker.
Oh, man.
So
everyone else was just walking on their knees around him to make him look bigger.
Yes.
Yeah. It was like a forced perspective Gandalf situation.
Right. Yeah. And this would lead to... So, of course, up until this point, like I said, when you think of Sting in the early 80s, early 90s, the buzz cut, which he'd already stopped bleaching his hair. You know, he had kind of let his hair.
So damaging.
Yeah, well, he'd let his hair kind of get back to its natural color, but he was still doing the colors, and he still had the face paint. He was still Sting.
Very Ultimate Warrior-esque. We talked about that in the last.
Sure, but could actually wrestle.
Correct. And not a huge
becomes correct. Also, he starts what would end up being a 15-month break from the ring, starting in the fall of 1996. So after this whole War Games shenanigans, where he basically is like, at the end of it, it's like, oh, actually, Sting didn't turn on his friends, and we didn't trust him, and now we've proven that there's like a fake Sting, and that's not who we thought it was. Sting
weird. Was this all just a big ruse so he could take a break?
Partially,
Okay.
yes, but he doesn't. He takes a break from the ring. But Sting becomes influenced by the movie The Crow.
Yes.
He grows his hair out really long.
Yes.
He starts wearing the stark white and black face paint, which are the colors of the NWO, by the way.
Yeah.
And the long trench coat, and he starts carrying around a black baseball bat.
This is how I think of Sting.
Is it? Okay.
Honestly, like...
This is the best Sting.
It is the best Sting.
Where he wasn't even wrestling matches. He would be, like, hanging out in the rafters, like, up in the nosebleeds of the
crow,
arenas.
Justin.
He, like, up there,
Like a crow.
up there brooding, watching.
Just...
And for a long time, it was like, what side is he on? Because he's not, like, he's up there watching our WCW guys get beat down and not doing anything about it.
But he's not, and he's wearing the NWO, but he's not wrestling.
But he's not helping out. He's not helping out the NWO either. And the NWO is like starting to cater to him, so they acknowledge that that's a fake Sting. We know it wasn't a real Sting, but we fucked it up, and we fucked up your trust in him. So mission accomplished.
Yeah. And now he's just up there brooding. He's just
he's crowing it up. You have this whole dynamic of these guys running roughshod, and they're starting to expand at this point and bring in other members. And like I said, we're not going to go over all of that, but it's starting to infiltrate all these different storylines. So it's becoming this like show-wide thing. So it's like, you know, it's not just like one segment or the main event storyline with Hulk Hogan. It's becoming all these different guys and these different stories. And through it all, you have this like creepy presence of this guy in like white makeup up in the rafters, just like, who would just and he wouldn't be there all the time. He would just show up. Like sometimes he would just be there, just watching and like brooding like a crow.
Just like a crow, just shitting on things.
Just shitting on
from the rafters.
We get in late '96. We get Rowdy Roddy Piper joins the company, who is on the tail end of his in-ring career. Really.
I was about to say, was he still wrestling for WWF, or was he like on a break?
Yes,
or?
he was kind of a part-time wrestler, part-time like on-screen authority figure for a while in WWF. But he had been in WWF until earlier in '96. Like he performed at WrestleMania that year. During the Hogan-Piper feud, he comes in basically to fight Hogan.
Okay.
And like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Eric Bischoff, the real life guy in charge, is revealed to have been the mastermind behind this whole thing.
NWO.
So he not only joins the NWO, turns out he's been the NWO the whole time, and he's the one who has brought about all of this. Because in real life, he's the one who signed Hogan. He's the one who signed Hall and Nash. Like, this is basically, again, blurring the reality and fiction of like, it was me. I did it. Because I actually am the one that signed these guys to these big contracts and brought them into this company.
They should always know, like, of course this is planned. All being paid by the, like...
Right, well, they
had
had
these... it's real.
They would have, and see, WCW, this is before you had a lot of the fan knowledge of what was going on behind the scenes.
I guess, yeah.
But then you would have these things like the famous NWO vignettes, which were like, they were shot on like a handheld camcorder, and they were black and white, and it'd be like, the following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order. So it was like
Yeah.
they were doing these things where it was like the they were implying that they were buying airtime on Turner Networks during their show to fuck with them, that this wasn't a part of the show, that they purchased airtime like any other commercial.
Okay.
Or that they were like taking over the feed at points.
Yeah.
You know, like kind of fucking with their TV feed. So it was just very cool to watch this. And it's like you're 11 years old. I'm 11 years old. You know, it's like, what is happening? This is so cool. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, Hulk Hogan's cool? Because I was never a Hulk Hogan fan, and I was like, this kind of rules.
I'm going to get a black do-rag.
Well, I'm gonna paint a black shoe polish beard on my face.
Ooh, and then I'm gonna get that big mustache.
That big blonde handlebar mustache with black shoe polish beard.
Like Fu Manchu. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. So this leads us into 1997, which I think is certainly widely considered to be the best year of WCW.
It was a good year. It was the year that Spice Girls really blew up. Well,
1997 was a great year in general. 1997 was a great year for wrestling, as we've talked about on our WWF episodes. One of, if not my favorite year of WWF ever, and certainly, in my opinion, the best year of WCW, because this is the from like mid 96 through the end of 97. This is the prime NWO era.
Yeah.
We've got throughout all of this, you've got, again, Sting's not wrestling at this time, but he's this presence on the show.
Just lurking.
He's lurking. He's crowing. You get...
he's just flying down from the rafters to distract you during matches. Yeah. Yeah.
And in 97, you also start to get the rise of what would be kind of like the big... So you already had like kind of your baby faces, like a lot of the people who were heels when NWO started kind of de facto became baby faces because of NWO. So like Ric Flair, he was doing heel shit before. Now he's a baby face.
Yeah.
You know, like Lex Luger, now he's a baby face.
Right. Basically, if you're with WCW, whether you're a heel or a baby face, you're
essentially,
a baby face,
but you start to get the rise in 97 of like Diamond Dallas Page. DDP is a guy who didn't start even training to be a wrestler until he was in his early 40s, which is nuts.
That is crazy. That would be like you doing that in a few years. Could you imagine?
Yeah. And he basically kind of like is a groundswell of support. Like he goes from like he'd been wrestling and around the wrestling business for a long time, but this is the year he really starts to become a big deal. We also see the debut of Bill Goldberg in the summer of 1997.
Interesting. Okay.
Who is a ex-football player who starts a winning streak that going into 98. Like to me, these are like other than like Sting.
Yeah.
Probably the two biggest homegrown talents WCW ever produced. Like who weren't big stars elsewhere
beforehand, right?
Before they came. Diamond Dallas Page, he becomes a legit main event guy.
Yeah.
And Goldberg, of course. Goldberg's ascension, he goes from doing, 30-second jobber matches in the middle of the show in the summer to like by the end of the year he's got like people are going nuts for Goldberg. He's becoming a huge deal.
Yeah.
This is also when you get there's other stuff going on in WCW, which always made their shows so interesting to watch, because you'd have the NWO stuff, which was storyline heavy, and those were your big stars were involved in that. But then you had one of the things other than NWO at this time that WCW was really famous for was their cruiserweight division. And this was a lot of guys that had wrestled in, guys from Japan, guys from Canada or Europe, guys from Mexico, who were smaller and wrestled different styles, a lot more technical.
And I'm seeing a lot of familiar names in here.
Yeah, this is the first
time. A lot of up-and-coming stars.
This is the first time a lot of pretty much mainstream U.S. Wrestling fans, myself included, are seeing guys like Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Rey Mysterio Jr., Eddie Guerrero, Ultimo Dragon, La Parka, Psychosis. These were matches that they would always start the cards,
Yeah.
and it was just phenomenal. Like, nowadays, I feel like we're a little spoiled. Back then, it was like, I had never seen people doing the shit they were doing. Like, that was a kind of wrestling I didn't know was going on.
Yeah.
You know, this, like, you know, you got, like, Dean Malenko and Chris Benoit and Jericho doing this really technical style. You've got, obviously, like, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero. There's a ton of luchadors.
And it's not just, like, big hulking dudes.
No, it's
Like,
small guys.
It's small guys. Like,
it's small guys, a lot of whom look like regular people. They don't look like big, roided up wrestler guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're bringing all this, like, international kind of flair to this, like where else are you seeing Japanese style wrestling on US TV?
Yeah.
There isn't anywhere.
Yeah.
Like ECW did a lot of this first, but also ECW wasn't on TV everywhere, and I was not aware of ECW at the time.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend I was.
Right.
So you also have that, so it's like you had this cool mix of, like, yeah, even if the main events are like a bunch of past their prime guys, like you've got Hogan and Piper, who are like 10 years past their prime,
just fighting, just yelling at each other.
But you'd also have, like, really high flying, crazy stuff on the card, or you'd have, like, really technical matches, and you'd have gimmick stuff, and I always thought that WCW did a really great job of that, and it becomes a sticking point here, as we'll see in a year or two, with sort of the not the downfall, but their exodus. You see a lot of these guys. You see a lot of these guys jump ship.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they can see the writing on the wall.
Yeah. So throughout '97, you get the Macho Man joins the NWO. This is when we're really expanding now. We're like, everyone's joining the NWO.
Yeah, Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman, who was, if you remember Dennis Rodman in 1997, was about as big a star as the sports world had.
Was this when he was married to Carmen Electra?
This was that era when he was married to Carmen Electra. He is playing for the championship Chicago Bulls at this time, and it was a big sticking point apparently with him because the NWA or the NBA didn't want him in the wrestling ring taking bumps when he's supposed to be playing basketball and risking getting hurt.
Yeah.
Dennis Rodman, I mean he wrestled matches and was a big part of this. Especially, I remember going over to Steven's house and watching. I think Bash at the Beach '97 is Hogan and Dennis Rodman versus the Giant and Lex Luger. And Dennis Rodman was just this not counterculture, but like the bad boy. He was huge. Everything he did got headlines. Everything he did was controversial.
Yep.
He was wearing a dress. He was marrying to Carmen Electra. He was flipping the bird. He was getting suspended from the NBA for his conduct, and it was just like whatever he did, people were talking about it. It goes to show how huge this was. Like, this got mainstream attention.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And in a way that most wrestling never had, except for maybe WWF during like the Hulk Hogan rock and wrestling years.
Yes.
But all of this is building to Starrcade 1997, which is December of '97.
Okay, Starrcade.
Starrcade is basically WCW's WrestleMania, essentially. It's their biggest show of the year. It's at the end of the year as opposed to WrestleMania.
Starrcade, great name.
Great name. And
I really prefer the names of their shows.
Starrcade dates back to Jim Crockett Promotions before WCW. We talked about that in the last
talked about it last time.
And boy, did they whiff this. They really did.
They
the
just
whole
beefed
thing.
It.
So we're building toward Hogan versus Sting, right? Because Sting is eventually revealed to be on Team WCW, right? He eventually shows his colors. He's anti-NWO.
Okay.
He's coming for Hogan. He's coming for the title.
Yeah.
And so we're building to this as the main event of our biggest show of the year. It's Hogan and Sting.
Huge, right.
This is, a year and a half almost in the making.
Also, like, first time Sting's, has he not been wrestling still?
Nope, this is going to be his first match in 15 months.
Now, so.
And he looks totally different.
Yeah.
And December 1997. Now, Amy, what happened a few weeks before? The wrestling historian. What happened a few weeks before this? December 1997, maybe in the other company.
Would it have been the Montreal Screwjob?
Correct! It was the Montreal Screwjob, which we have talked about in detail, so we won't go into.
Fucked over.
Getting fucking screwed.
Yeah.
So Bret Hart is now leaving for WCW. So now not only do they have, this, the biggest main event of the biggest show of the year with our most successful story ever, plus we have quite literally the hottest and craziest real life thing going on where the biggest free agent in the world, Bret Hart, and it's not even close, is now coming in and joining the company as this is happening. And
they fucking fumble it.
Oh, they really do. They fumble it hard. And it ends with Sting with the title, and then they take it off of him, and they try to recreate almost do a callback to Montreal a few weeks ago, where it was there's a fast count, and Bret Hart's not going to let it happen again, and
not great.
Not great. And that becomes increasingly the story of WCW from this point.
They had it, and then they fucking fumbled it.
Honestly, I think
WCW.
I think a lot of people, especially creatively, they look at Starrcade '97 and the Hogan Sting match and the result as that was the first big thing that was
that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, it still had a lot of steam left in it, but it was uh-oh.
If you went back and you pinpointed one thing, you were like, that's where it started falling up. That's where it
kind of started falling apart.
Yeah.
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 So 1998 ends up being their biggest year ever. They're raking in millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Despite 1998 kind of being regarded as the beginning of the creative decline, the NWO was sort of running its course.
Sure,
right, at
you
this
can only
point.
do that kind of thing for so long and keep it fresh and keep it
right, right.
Yeah.
So, and a couple things, a couple things happen in '98 that stretches WCW really thin, and it starts to get a little long in the tooth. In January, they introduce a second weekly show called Thunder.
Oh, I remember Thunder. Okay.
Yeah. And early on in 1998, they end up doing basically an NWO civil war. They split the NWO. And this is when we get...
Now there's another faction.
Well, we get NWO Hollywood, which is still heel
Hogan.
and led by Hulk Hogan. And then we get... Wolfpack back in the mat, and the something bad boys of wrestling. NWO Wolfpack, which is the red and black, which is now a new babyface NWO that splits off, that's led by Kevin
They're
Nash.
we still don't like WCW.
Well, it's much less about NWO versus WCW now, and it's more of NWO is just more part of the show now. So again, it's kind of the magic is sort of wearing off.
Yeah.
Right? It's not as cool. Plus, it's the group itself has become... It was cool when it was 3 or 4 big stars. And now it's NWO cuts a promo and it's fucking 25 guys in the ring. 20 of which are a bunch of mid-card guys that nobody cares about. Right?
You're they let them in? This can't be that cool anymore.
It's not that cool anymore when fucking Michael Wall Street and Bryan Adams are in it.
When it's not elite anymore.
Exactly. So for a while there, Wolfpack is really cool because they're sort of the new one. There's very few of them. Mm-hmm. You also get some of the WCW guys join the Wolfpack because it's NWO, but it's babyface. So
but
Lex
it's
Luger,
nice guys.
But it's they're the cool guys.
Yeah. Lex
Luger joins. Sting joins, which I still hate. It makes no sense to me that Sting was in the Wolfpack. Why would he join the NWO? After all of that, he joins NWO. The only thing that was cool about it was he switched from the black and white face paint to the black and red.
Yeah.
So it was a cool look, but other than that, it never made any sense to me why Sting would join.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Okay.
Well, a lot of what they're doing at this point is
honestly,
making less and less sense.
Yes, correct. On the other channel, WWF is really picking up steam. This is when we get Mike Tyson in for the Stone Cold versus Shawn Michaels. Mike Tyson? The build to WrestleMania 14. April 13th, right after WrestleMania, WWF Raw beats Nitro in the ratings for the first time in 84 weeks.
And we talked about that on our
this
WWF.
is the beginning of the Mr. McMahon character. This is
Yeah.
really like the Attitude Era in WWF has started at this
The
point.
crotch chopping. The crotches
There's so much crotch chopping
been
going
chopped.
on. Middle fingers, crotch chops, boobies. It's a wondrous time
and it's
to
like, the
to be like a
NWO,
13-year-old boy.
They were the coolest in like '97, and
Right, and all of those things,
Yeah.
those that edgier stuff was a direct response to WCW doing the NWO storyline,
Exactly.
which was much edgier than anything anyone was doing at the time.
Right. And it just turns out that WWF was frankly just like better at it, and also the behind the scenes. I don't know.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we could devote hours and hours to talking about what destroyed WCW and who. In fact, just recently there was a multi-part documentary series that Vice did called "Who Killed WCW."
It was you.
It was me. I did it.
Yeah. Yep.
One of my favorite. But WCW. The thing is, WCW is still good at this point. Like it's still. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not maybe as good as last year, but they're still.
Right.
I mean, the cruiserweights are still kicking ass.
Right. You got the
Wolfpack is
Wolfpack.
like new and cool, and you've got Goldberg is really, really becoming a thing. Like the groundswell of fan support for Goldberg is crazy
Yeah.
at this point, and he beats Hogan for the title at the Georgia Dome in July. He wins the world title undefeated, and so you have this just like monster babyface good guy. Sting is still doing his thing. So it's still good, but it's even if the bloom is off the rose a little bit. Halloween Havoc 1998. Like how sort of I said, Starrcade them whiffing that main event, Starrcade 97. That was the first indication that like, maybe they're not headed in the best direction.
You kind of had like every good thing going for you. Like you had it. It would have been so easy.
Mm-hmm. You had one job.
Something satisfying. You had one job.
So Halloween Havoc 98 is two things happen.
Two things
happen. Hulk Hogan politics his way into getting the Ultimate Warrior, who had been out of wrestling for a while at this point, to sign to WCW to essentially recreate the magic of their WrestleMania 6 main event, but this time with like a heel Hogan. So Halloween Havoc has like a double main event of Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, which is widely considered to be one of the worst matches that has ever been shown on a pay-per-view event. It's really not. That is not an exaggeration. Yeah. It's god awful. It's horrible. And then on top of that, so the world title match is Goldberg, the champion, versus DDP, Diamond Dallas Page. So two of the fan favorites.
Yeah.
Going at it for the world title.
Okay.
People have already sat through this abomination that was Hogan and Warrior. And people at home are tuning in. It's like, all right, well, Goldberg and DDP, this will be good at least. So they're watching at home, and all these people that paid for it, and all of a sudden, bloop, it goes away.
Oh, God.
Because they had gone over time. And you were only allotted so much time on these pay-per-view streams. So essentially, Goldberg and DDP, the bell rings, they go to lock up, and for thousands and thousands of people, it ends.
Oh my God.
That's the end of the show. To the point that the next night on Nitro, they show the whole match in its entirety for free because so many people didn't even get to see it.
Jesus.
And the irony being, it's a really great match. Probably Goldberg's best match. If not one of his best matches, certainly.
I can't believe that.
Like, this company, the hot fucking mess. Hot mess.
Hot
we could
mess
talk.
express.
I could go on and on and on and on about how this company was a hot mess, but it's really starting to show at this point.
They had it all.
They had it all.
They had everything going for them.
And here we go. Here's another indication. The inmates are running the asylum because who is the head booker of the show now? Kevin Nash. He's the guy running creative for the whole company. So what does he do at Starrcade 98, a year after they whiff Hogan versus Sting. The
He's
main
gonna
event
write
is
him a good story.
the main event is Goldberg, who at this point is undefeated and has this giant streak, and he's been the champion for 6 months, versus Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash books himself to end the streak and beats Goldberg for the title.
Oh, shocking.
I know, right? So, people are really getting fed up at this point. I think they're like, we're over the NWO shit. Let's move on.
Yeah.
What are you doing to our boy Goldberg?
Yeah.
What is this shit? And that leads us to something that we talked about on the Attitude Era episodes of WWF, which is referred to as the finger poke of doom. The concept being the main event of Nitro is Hulk Hogan versus Kevin Nash. The leader of the two NWO factions, which is essentially kind of going... NWO sort of slowly being phased out at this point.
Yeah, going by the wayside.
Yeah. And when they spent the whole show building up to this big main event, Kevin Nash pokes his finger in Hogan's chest. Hogan flies back like he's just been like shot. Nash pins him. The whole thing's a ruse. We're reuniting the NWO. Now the NWO is reunited.
Oh, Lord.
And so the whole thing is just kind of this big bait and switch.
Yeah.
Of we're promising you this big match and it's not actually a thing. And actually this thing you hate is back in full force now. Meanwhile, over on WWF television, Raw is pre-taped, and in one of Eric Bischoff's lower moves, he used to like to give away the results on WCW TV to their taped stuff. So Tony Schiavone goes on Nitro famously and says, Mick Foley's going to win the world title tonight. Mick Foley, of course, being a fan favorite, one of these like groundswell of support guys who was never going to be a main event guy.
Yeah.
And he tells them, that'll put butts in the seats. We're going to give away the ending of your show. A bunch of people then change the channel to go watch Mick Foley win the world title. So it really backfires and blows up in their face. And this is off. So Starrcade 97 is kind of the hint of where things were headed.
Yeah.
By a year later, we've got Kevin Nash booking himself to end the streak, followed a few weeks later by the finger poke of doom.
And
then
it was it's just it's a quick decline after that.
It really starts to fall off a cliff. And they're like, hey, we should bring in Vince Russo, the guy who was kind of the mastermind of the Attitude Era, who we talked about in our Attitude Era episode, but who, without a filter, really kind of sucks ass. And is terrible. Just terrible.
Yeah.
So 1998 is their biggest year financially ever. Like I said, they're making millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. By the end of 99, they're losing around $5 million a month. So that's how quick the fall was. In the fall of 1999, Eric Bischoff is removed. The company is creative ratings-wise, financially, sort of in a free fall through 99. Like, things are coming off the rails quickly. And so by the fall, they remove Eric Bischoff. And they're like, all right, well, this isn't working anymore. We got to try something else. And they bring in Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara, who are, Ed Ferrara is his writing partner. And a lot of for all of Vince McMahon's faults and all the terrible shit that Vince McMahon has done in real life and all the terrible shit he's put on his TV show over the years. He did, I think, sort of act like a filter to Vince Russo. Because Vince Russo would come up with some batshit stuff, and then I think Vince McMahon would be like, yeah, we could kind of tweak it, maybe do this and that, and make it maybe more palatable and make it make sense a little as to why it's happening.
Right.
Well, of course, Vince McMahon's not there anymore.
Right.
So
he's Vince Russo's just flying free, doing whatever the fuck he wants.
This is shit gets really bad. Like it's kind of shorthand in wrestling fandom of like something being as bad as 2000 WCW. Nothing's as bad as 2000 WCW. I am tuned out at this point. I'm not watching it anymore. They completely fumble Bret Hart from the beginning. They have no idea what to do with Bret Hart. In late 99, he gets concussed by Goldberg and is forced to retire.
Oh.
Before this, they relaunched the NWO as NWO 2000, led by Bret Hart and Jeff Jarrett. And they would do the constant work shoot bullshit of them trying to blur the lines of is this real or is this fake? But it's edgy and it's very trashy and Jerry Springery and it's bad. It's bad. Russo becomes an on-screen character because of course he does.
Yeah.
They do a gimmick called Oklahoma, a character called Oklahoma that is making fun of Jim Ross, who is a commentator on WWF television, the head commentator, specifically making fun of his Bell's palsy.
Oh my God.
Which is widely considered by everyone to be horribly distasteful and a real asshole thing to do.
Jesus Christ.
And it dies a death, of course.
Yeah, I would hope so.
By the end of 99, so they are hired in the fall. By the end of the year, they're out. Right?
Yeah.
In January 2000, to appease the fans, they're like, okay, guys, we're going to put the world title on one of your favorites. Chris Benoit, the guy, one of the cruiserweight guys who's been grinding for years.
Yeah.
We're going to put the title on him. Right? And they do. At the January 2000 pay-per-view. Except that right after the show, he gave them the belt back, and the next day signed with WWF.
Oh, shit.
And the next week, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and Perry Saturn show up on WWF TV as the Radicals. It's Chris Jericho has left. Chris Jericho leaves in late 99. There's nowhere for these guys to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not going to move them up the card. There is,
No.
I mean, they've been doing the same stuff now for several years, and it's been
not
made
when they
very
have these
clear
guys
to them.
doing NWO shit.
It's been made very clear to them, you're not a priority. You're not going to be a main event guy. You're not going to be making any more money. You're not going to be satisfied creatively. And so they start leaving. In April of 2000, they try yet again to right the ship. And this time, they bring back both Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, who in real life really hate each other.
Okay, great.
Everyone hates Russo. But they bring them back, and as an attempt to right the ship, they reboot the complete product. They go on TV, and they're like, as of right now, all existing storylines are dropped. All titles are vacated, and we are starting from scratch.
Oh God!
It's
they really don't have any more ideas.
They got nothing. They got nothing. They start this storyline of the New Blood versus the Millionaires Club, which starts off with some potential of like the New Blood's going to be this stable of new and upcoming guys, and we're going to address the criticism of like us just pushing the old guys. The Millionaires Club will be the older established guys, and then this new stable is going to be a way for us to highlight our new young talent. It doesn't work.
It doesn't go anywhere. Sure.
No. Vince Russo's back doing Vince Russo bullshit. Bash at the Beach. Again, we're back at Bash at the Beach.
Again, always a Bash at the Beach.
The last time Hulk Hogan appears on WCW TV, Bash at the Beach 2000. He is scheduled to face Jeff Jarrett, the world champion. Also, Jeff Jarrett is world champion. Come on.
I wasn't going to say anything.
There is a lot of debate and discussion because all of these guys are liars. It's hard to tell who's actually telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
But what happens from a fan perspective is Hogan and Jarrett are getting ready to wrestle. Jeff Jarrett lays down in the ring and tells Hogan to pin him. Basically, Hogan, if he didn't know this was happening, he did a really great acting job here. Which, as we know, Hogan's not a great actor.
He is.
He clearly he doesn't know what he looks like. He doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Because like this is not. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
No. Yeah. This is not scripted.
He goes outside and gets a microphone, and he's like, Russo, is this your bullshit? Russo comes out, and Hulk Hogan kind of. He's like I linked it in here. You can watch it at your own time. But he's like, this is why this company is in the state it's in, is because of bullshit like this.
Oh, God.
He begrudgingly pins Jeff Jarrett. Mm-hmm. Basically tells Vince Russo to fuck off. Mm-hmm. Walks out of the ring. Vince Russo then gets in the ring, grabs the microphone, and gives and starts cutting a promo, like a real promo, where he essentially fires Hulk Hogan on the air. And is like,
God.
And is like, you have my word, you will never see that piece of shit on our show again. And so there's all kinds of rumors of who knew what was going to happen. Was Hogan in on it? It sure seemed like he wasn't, but maybe he was.
Yeah, there's no idea. Yeah.
There is a real life lawsuit that happened, so that's kind of that lends credence to the "this is real" thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, Eric Bischoff, again, a liar. It's wrestling. It's supposed that's all they do is lie.
It's all. It's the whole thing. It's deception.
Eric Bischoff evidently did not know this was going to happen, so him and Russo are like, done now. He's like, you just went into business for yourself. You took control of the show without even telling me what was happening.
Yeah.
Like Hogan's gone. This is also around the same time that Ready to Rumble is coming out. Do you remember Ready to Rumble?
I do remember that. I never saw it, but I
David Arquette movie.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that was made in conjunction with WCW around this time, and as part of the promotion for that, they make the actor David Arquette the WCW World Champion.
I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah, something that was not met with a lot of positivity.
Poor David Arquette.
And David Arquette is a genuine wrestling fan.
Yeah,
he
he's
loves
a
wrestling.
big-time wrestling fan, yeah.
Big-time wrestling fan, and loved the opportunity that he was getting to work with WCW, was completely against the idea of being the world champion, and was like, people are going to hate this. I'm not a wrestler. You're disgracing your own title. I should not be the guy carrying your title.
Yeah.
They did it anyway. He like took all the money that they paid him and like donated it to charity because he didn't want to like keep any of it.
Really?
Yeah. So not a criticism of David Arquette. I like David Arquette. Yeah, not a criticism of him at all. He knew it was a shit idea, just like all the rest of us did.
Yeah, yeah. It was just a total like marketing gimmick. That's all that was. Yeah.
So we're circling the drain, right?
Yikes!
Like, there is no there. Whenever someone's like, "Oh, this is like 2000 WCW bad," when AEW does something or WWE does something, like, if you're saying that, you clearly were not watching WCW in 2000, because I don't know if any wrestling's ever been that bad. Like, even by my standards, and I watch some crap sometimes.
Well, you know.
So again, you can go on and on of who killed WCW, what killed WCW. Ultimately, corporate America killed WCW.
Yeah. As it does everything.
In 1996, Time Warner bought out Turner Broadcasting System, and if you'll recall, Ted Turner was always the guy who he loved wrestling, and he was always Ted Turner. As long as I have a network, wrestling has a spot on my network.
Right.
However, by this point being 2000, 2001, WCW is losing between $12 and $17 million a year.
Yikes.
In 2000, they lost $60 million.
Oh my god. That's bad.
It's pretty bad considering considering in 1998 they had their biggest year ever, where they made the most money they ever did.
Oh my god. It's a quick decline.
It is very
swift.
quick.
Yeah.
In 2001, the AOL Time Warner merger is completed. So WCW is now part of the AOL Time Warner family. As a part of this merger, Ted Turner is effectively forced out.
Yeah.
He is ever since then he has had nothing to do with any of this. AOL Time Warner didn't really want WCW. They had and WCW had given them no reason to want them. They were
they did not.
They were a money loser. They were bankrupt creatively, it seemed. The whole thing was just a shit show.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. It really is that it fell apart so quickly. There was a one last gasp of an attempt to save WCW in 2001, early 2001. Eric Bischoff wanted to buy the company outright. Like, sell it to me. And to do that, he got together a group of private investors, and they formed a group called Fusient Media Ventures.
Okay.
and made an offer to buy WCW.
Okay.
And initially it was like, okay, well, we don't want it. We'll sell it to you. We'll sell it to you.
Yeah.
You can have it. However, the new head of Turner Networks, a guy by the name of Jamie Kellner, formally canceled all WCW programming from on Turner Networks. The Fusient deal was based on them having a television deal. They're like, we'll buy the company as long as your TV deal's still in place.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm not going to buy the company when there's...
We're not going to go hunt for a new TV deal.
Yeah, no.
So once that happened, Fusient backs out. All the investors fall apart. And that's kind of the last gasp. On March 23rd, 2001, the WWF and Vince McMahon buy all of WCW's trademarks and their video library, as well as 24 contracts for $3 million.
Ugh.
They only paid $3 million for everything.
Oh my God.
And on top of this, pretty much all of the main event level guys.
Yeah.
Right? So Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Ric Flair, Goldberg, Sting, Scott Steiner, who was a big main event guy at this time. They were all contracted not to WCW, they were contracted to AOL Time Warner. So it didn't matter that WCW went out of business because AOL Time Warner still kept having to pay them. So it was sort of like, okay, well, do you want to break your contract and go work for WWF, or do you want to sit your contract out and make millions of dollars for sitting at home?
Yeah, I would do that.
And of course they were all like, well, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So as they bring in WCW and try to do this invasion storyline, it basically features none of the big stars.
Right, because they're all just...
from WCW.
Sitting at home collecting checks.
Correct.
Yeah.
The final episode of Monday Nitro is the final WCW product. It airs on March 26, 2001, and is opened by Vince McMahon.
I remember you talking about that, yeah.
This is one of the most wild and surreal things I think that ever happened in the history of wrestling. Seeing Vince McMahon show up on a simulcast with Raw and Nitro happening at the same time.
That's so weird.
Absolutely wild. The main event is the two wrestlers who most defined WCW, I think. Ric Flair and Sting. Sting defeats Ric Flair in the main event of the last show.
Yeah.
And then they hug it out. And that's it. And then WCW as a company ceases to exist.
Yeah.
ECW, kind of the third biggest company in the world, had folded a few months earlier.
Yeah.
And from this point on, there's one company. There's one major company.
And it still exists.
They, of course, had their invasion storyline, which tried to bring in... They did bring in WCW, ECW guys. It's famously one of the worst things ever. It's terrible. It's terrible to where by the end of the year, they pretty much just put a bullet in its head and was just like,
They're like, we're just not going to talk about it.
Let's move on. We got to get this.
I just want to talk about how I think I know what killed WCW.
Okay.
After this. It was 9/11.
I mean, I'm glad WCW wasn't around to see it at least.
I mean,
not in any real form.
All bad things happened in 2001.
Yeah, that's true.
And it
is true that basically
we've not been great since.
Basically, WWE's competition ceased to exist that year and set up a 20-year almost hegemony of the wrestling industry. There were a few attempts to restart WCW as a brand to keep the brand alive, but that very quickly didn't work. Yeah. They did a version of the NWO in WWE in 2002, which was terrible and did not last long. You do get a lot of that slow trickle of talent.
Sure.
As their
contracts end. Yeah.
Yeah, as the contracts end. So you do get like Ric Flair eventually shows up. Nash eventually shows back up. Hogan shows back up. Yeah. Goldberg, Scott Steiner, on and on. You do sort of, as a direct result of WCW going out of business, the next year you get the creation of TNA, which is still
yeah.
going.
Yep.
Which never ever reached the level of WCW. They were the second place, but it was a very, very distant second.
Yeah.
A very distant second. And I think today I kind of think of AEW really until AEW started in 2019. You had one company dominate the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I do feel like AEW is sort of, whether they intentionally present themselves like this or not, I do think of them as sort of the spiritual successor to WCW. Their shows are on Turner Networks. Their shows are on TNT and TBS. Sting was a big part of, he just retired earlier this year, and he was a big part of AEW. And I just, and plus they feature a lot, you have a lot of crossover with like Japanese wrestlers and Mexican, and you get a lot of different styles that you don't see on WWE TV. So I tend to think of AEW as sort of the spiritual successor if they hadn't gone off the rails.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you like AEW, right?
I do. I watch AEW and I watch WWE these days.
Cool. Okay.
So it's two very different shows, two very different vibes.
Yeah.
But I love.
Honestly, I think wrestling needed that. I mean, I don't know much about it, but like, I mean, I feel like, you know, I mean, one company having just like basically a monopoly on anything, it's just like, it's not interesting.
No,
and
it's not.
You know.
Plus, it's bad for the people who try to make a living doing that. If there's only 100%. One place you can go to make money, you better hope you get there. And when you're there, you better hope you can stay.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that AEW and the existence of AEW is a net positive for the wrestling business. I don't think it's a coincidence that the WWE is the best they've been in maybe 20 plus years nowadays, in my opinion. Yeah. I don't think it's a coincidence that that turnaround started after AEW.
Yeah. I mean, some of the best years for WCW and then WWF was when they were trying to one-up each other and compete. And I think, you know, if your only competition is yourself, then you're going to get complacent.
And that's exactly what happened with WWE. The product stagnated.
Yeah.
They got complacent. They had no one nipping at their heels, so there wasn't any incentive to do any better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think we had, and I think as we get further along as AEW grows and continues, you know, I think there will be a real kind of historical reassessment of those years, 2000, almost 20 years, 2001 to 2019.
Yeah.
Where there was just the one company.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you're exactly right. It's better for fans. It's better for wrestlers. It's better for the industry in general.
Right.
When there's competition.
It's like if there's only one, it's like if it was just NBC.
Right.
And you didn't have ABC and CBS and Fox and like, and be like,
same
that's
thing.
boring as shit. Like, I don't want to only have what they have to watch. I want options.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So I think that, happy to say that while the WCW story didn't end happily, that nowadays I think the wrestling industry is actually, in the past 4 or 5 years, grown to become the healthiest it has been in many, many, many years.
Would you say that WCW walked so AEW could run?
No, because I would say AEW has not reached near the heights WCW.
So WCW ran so that AEW could have a chance.
Could have a chance at walking.
Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah.
Here's the ironic part, right? The TV landscape is so different now, right?
Yeah.
Than it was in the late 90s. When they canceled WCW programming in 2001, Nitro, which was at its low point, like when you think, okay, no one's watching this.
No one's watching shit.
They still had 3 million plus viewers a week when that show got canceled.
That's crazy.
There were still 3 million people plus watching every week. That's more than any of them do now.
No, yeah.
Oh my God, if someone got 3 million, oh wow, that's crazy. You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a completely different landscape. Ratings are looked at entirely different now than they were back then.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just, It's a shame. I think WCW could have been saved. You know, I think just it hadn't gone off the rails so bad that it was unsavable. But unfortunately, they didn't get the opportunity to do that.
No.
But it certainly, in a very relatively short period of time, left their mark on the industry and really were a touchstone. Mm-hmm. Like that company really realistically, for the short amount of time they were the industry leader, mm-hmm. they completely changed what pro wrestling is.
Yeah,
at 100%. Least as we know it today. They changed how the television shows are produced. They changed what kind of match styles and what kind of wrestling you can see. Mm-hmm. They changed how storylines develop. Yeah. Their impact really is, you can't understate it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Rip WCW.
Rip.
Pour one out.
Pour one out for World Championship Wrestling.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? The people love when we sing on this.
I feel like it's been a while since we've
It really has.
Yeah. Gotta get back into that.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. I've been getting schooled, as I'm sure many of you all have, because I never knew that much about WCW. So this has been like a lot of learning for me. Sure. So this has been awesome. So thank you.
I hope it was enjoyable. I hope it wasn't too boring.
Justin prepares all of our episodes, as I'm sure you all can put together from our discussions. Justin puts together our episodes, and I finish them up. But a particular shout out to you, because this is a lot of prep for these wrestling ones.
Oh, well,
and I know that you do enjoy it.
Sure.
But it is a lot of prep. So you put a lot of work into this. So thank you for our fourth wrestling retrospective.
Yeah. I'm happy to do it. I love talking about this stuff, in case you didn't notice.
I did notice. Now, so I'm going to give you a break, because you've done a lot of talking.
Yes, I have.
I'm going to give you a break, and I'm going to do our plugs.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm gonna sit back and take a sip of my water.
Sit back, have a little sippy sip. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, go back and listen to the 84 episodes of our podcast that we have done wherever you found this one, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. You can check us out on the social medias over on Instagram and Threads and X at Cool Kids Club Pod. You can also check us out on Facebook if you search for Cool Kids Club Podcast. Also, check out Justin's other podcast that is all wrestling all the time, Blue Bard Cage. You guys do some stuff currently, but there's like a shit ton of
we've been on break for a while. Blue Bard Cage kind of comes in waves. We haven't been doing it in a while, but we're talking about getting it back up. So look for that soon. Yeah, we do a little mix of classic stuff and current stuff.
But if you've never checked it out, there's like a million episodes you can go listen to. So tons of content you can go back and check out while you're waiting on them to do some new stuff. So yeah, check that out, and check out Justin's Instagram that is dedicated just to his toys and retro, his fun room.
Yes, my 50 Shades of Play.
Oh, gross. You can check out that Instagram at Cool Kid Clubhouse. And if you are so inclined, you can check us out personally on Instagram at Lousy with Ghosts. It's Justin, and I am at Amy with 4 H's.
Amy.
You can find those in the bio for our podcast. And as always, thank you to Brian Wakefield, Brian Hey Guys Wakefield at brianwakefieldmusic.com, friend to all great and small, and writer of all of the banger theme songs we have. If you're new to this, just wait, because we have a Halloween and a Christmas theme song.
They're coming too.
If you liked our regular theme song,
boy,
just wait.
Just wait.
Yeah, Brian's out here. He's healing the sick. He's
laying hands.
He's laying hands on the community. He's a pediatrician, if nobody knows that.
We really
I imagine we
deify
probably get
him.
new listeners in these wrestling episodes from like just wrestling fans. So that's
Maybe.
why I'm like, if this is the first time hearing our podcast and
Maybe.
you happen to like retro things, yeah, check us out. Justin, what would you advise our listeners to do until our next episode is out?
Well, I think that it would only be appropriate that you pay tribute not only to WCW, but you pay tribute to the NWO. Because even though WCW doesn't exist anymore, the NWO, as we know, is for life. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you not stay cool, you stay too sweet.